welcome to today's podcast and the Future of Insurance Industry Leader Series. I'm really excited today to have Charlotte Halkett, the CCO of Bought by Many, based over in the UK, joining us today. Welcome, Charlotte.
Hello, it's great to be here.
So, Charlotte, what I'd like you to give just a little bit of background on yourself and what you've done and what you're doing around innovation prior to joining Bought by Many.
Sure, great. Well, it's really great to be here. I'm a very passionate insurance person, is a quick summary of me. So I've spent just about my whole career in insurance. So quite unusually for an InsurTech person, my background really is insurance industry. So I'm an actuary by background. I started my career about sort of 8-9 years doing actuarial consultancy. So pricing, reserving, capital modeling, all that sort of thing, for much of the UK P&C market. It was a really great grounding. It was a really great way of seeing under the hood of what was happening in lots of insurance companies. I was working for a very dynamic, fast-growing, small actuarial consultancy called EMB at the time. I always like to say it was my first InsurTech, because what we were doing was around designing and bringing in new pricing techniques, new reserving techniques, the software that much of the insurance industry here still uses. And that was really exciting. It was part of a small team that was out there to kind of really try and change the world and move the needle. So that was the start of, I guess, my disruptive hat in insurance. It was a really great time. It was a great time for networking. It was just, I'm always just curious about what's going on and why things are as they are. My favorite fairy tale is The Emperor's New Clothes, and I live much of my life by it. It's because I always like to say, why are things like this? Why do they have to be like this? And so that's where it started. And then around sort of 2009, telematics at that time was something that there had been some elements of it around in the world, but there hadn't been the kind of killer proposition here in the UK that would really change things. And there was a band of different, some of my colleagues at EMB, and then some colleagues outside that industry as well, that were talking about what we could do in telematics. In particular, the thing that really drew together some of those people was around road safety. So it was around, it is impossible if you deal with motor claims day in, day out, to not get really affected by what these mean. And in particular, there was this real feeling that we could do something here. You know, we could really, so motor insurance had always been something that had a handbrake on some of the really risky elements. But as an insurance company, you have this real informational advantage. You understand what accidents really look like, what incidents really look like. And there was this feeling that we were just desperate to use that to try and save lives. And so in 2010, Insure the Box was launched, and we wrote saving lives on the wall. And we always said that was the mandate. The whole business, that's what it was going to do. It was going to save lives. And that's what we set out to do. So it was interesting. At the time, InsurTech wasn't a word. It wasn't really a thing. It was done. Because it was a very small team of us that were there at the beginning, we, the mandate that you end up getting as part of a small team is pretty broad. And as part of my mandate, I was looking after the messaging from the company. And so I ended up on the phone to a lot of the journalists right at the beginning, which was kind of the start of my, not that I thought of it at all in those days, but I guess this influencer part, which was that I often ended up on the phone call to the journalists. And I think, a year later, I was being told, this is never going to work. It's never going to happen. 2 years later, I was being told, this is never going to work. This is never going to happen. We were racking up 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 customers. And I'm still being told by the industry, this is never going to work. No one's going to buy it. They were buying it. It was different. It was really interesting at that time. The insurance industry just thought that new and different was just crazy. It was not something that happened. So that was back in 2010. So I suppose a few years after that, InsurTech as a word kind of coalesced from somewhere. I remember the debates on Twitter at the time around whether it should have an E or not.
I remember those too.
I think I voted for no E. I can't remember now.
I did. I voted for no E.
No E. Yeah, so it is a bit InsurTech, isn't it? I never thought of that. Anyway, so that was, Insure the Box was a huge success. It was bought in a few years by the MS&AD group, Dower, and it had a very close relationship with Toyota as well. So it was a fantastic time for that business, having grown. We did so many things that were really cutting edge. So it was around bringing point of accident alerts in, about bringing in behavioral change. So through messaging, it was about the triage system of how we message people as they changed their behavior as they drove from month to month, and all about rewards. It was all about trying to really positively influence people. And that was a fantastic time. And it really, I'm really proud to say that, telematics is a huge part of the UK motor market now here for young drivers. And even more impressively than that, we did save a lot of lives along the way, and Insure the Box still is, which is absolutely fantastic to see.
I remember Insure the Box really, really well when I was working for a different company that was based in the UK, and I remember it vividly how well you guys did, particularly for that younger age group that tends to be really high premiums, and really given that kind of feedback to get them to think safety as they're driving. And it really made a huge difference. I remember that vividly.
It's always very emotional being in startup anyway, but I think in Insure the Box it really was because that's what we were trying to save lives. We knew when there was an accident that was probably a 17, 18, 19-year-old who was in a horrible situation. So it really was a case of, we're going to try and stop this happening in the first place, or if it does happen, we're going to try and make it better. And certainly that, the early team, that was absolutely in the DNA, a very emotional way of doing it. So, I mean, I remember the first time that I think there was a case early on that was the first time where we sent an ambulance to somebody who had been off the road in the middle of the night, had a horrible accident, really high G-forces. And about a week after that, he woke up out of a coma. And I remember the whole office just being in tears over that, because it was the first time that we felt like it was this really material situation where we'd done what we'd set out to do. I think it happened a lot more times after that, but it was it was very emotional, but it was also fascinating from an insurance point of view. So it was a case of, we realized this was never going to work if we made it skin deep. It was only going to work if we changed the technology, the pricing, the underwriting, the communication, the claims, the after claims, the whole soup to nuts, whole business model, every single part of it. And that was quite hard to explain to the outside world, because it was a case of you couldn't just take a bit and put it somewhere else. And I think that was a lot of the shots that were fired at telematics early days, that this bit alone doesn't work. And we knew that. We knew it would only work with all of it or none of it, because it was so completely different. But it was, great time, fascinating, the kind of the counter fraud side, the underwriting parts, the really operational parts of having to deal with, mechanics and very different sorts of vehicles, but also, engaging with the government at the time as well, and trying to push the road safety agenda.
So what brought you to Bought by Many?
Yeah, absolutely. So after Insure the Box, I jumped off to start a home insurance, bring a home insurance product to life as well, which was over at Buzz. And then this time last year, so just over a year ago, joined Bought by Many as their first chief commercial officer. Bought by Many is a company that I've admired from the sidelines my whole career. So I'm incredibly lucky because of the early stage when I was part of the InsurTech movement. Yep. A lot of those early founders, we just found each other in the same way I found you. So
I know, we just kind of find each other.
Very small events at the time. There was only a few names in the industry. So I met Steve Mandel, who's the co-founder and CEO here, back in 2011, 2012, something like that. And I always just thought, that is a brilliant idea. So most founders that I've met, I'm sad to say, from along the lines, there's been a lot that I've thought, it's a nice idea, but it's not going to work from insurance sense. But there was something about Bought by Many from really early on that I just thought was genius about. So Bought by Many was, in the very early days, was brought to identify really underserved parts of the insurance societies, people who wanted insurance and couldn't find what they wanted, to bring them together and then to find those products in the insurance industry. So an incredibly, again, using this informational advantage, using the fact that Bought by Many really understood the insurance industry, and then really understood marketing and technology, was finding these people, bringing them together and bringing that insurance establishment with the customer. Always a fantastic idea, and always one that I knew was going to absolutely fly, which is of course what it did. And then about 3.5 years ago, they realized that they had a huge amount of people in groups. So it was over 1 million people in groups by this time at Bought by Many. And a lot of those groups were around pet insurance. So there was a lot of people who had pug dogs or Labrador dogs or older dogs or dogs with pre-existing conditions. And Bought by Many was really struggling to find the right products for those groups. So decided to go out and ask tens of thousands of potential customers what they would want from their ideal pet insurance, and then build that. So at that point, they pivoted is maybe the wrong word. They decided to create their own insurance products rather than just passing them on. And that's when Bought by Many's real journey of being a pet insurer started.
Yep.
So it started that journey with already years of in-depth knowledge of the customer side. So that part that InsurTech really should do really well, which is understanding the customer. I just don't think there's a company better in the industry that understands customers and what they really, really needed. And so we launched pet insurance just over 3 years ago, and now we have over 200,000 pets on the book. So it's been a phenomenal success. I joined last year as the first chief commercial officer as part of that, rocketing, supercharging the growth and the insurance commercial part. And it's been an absolute blast. We've had an amazing year. So, with more partnerships, we launched in Sweden, launched price comparison websites, have grown phenomenally over that time, expanded our underwriting footprint, expanded our actual product set, and just got smarter and smarter with, the data and the way we can serve customers. I joined because I knew the idea was brilliant. I joined because the people here, the culture here is really, really special. And then the most two important reasons why I joined was, number one, the customer. The absolute obsession with customers here is unlike anywhere else I've ever been. So we target NPS scores over 70. I think last month we got 80 across all touch points. It's incredibly high customer service. And there's also that obsession with employees as well, and happiness of employees. So it's a really great place to be. And I'm an insurance geek. I'm an actuary. I'm an insurance geek by background. And the insurance fundamentals are really, really good. That's my journey.
So, you guys have really evolved, because I remember meeting a number of people Bought by Many in the early days when they came over to the Global Insurance Accelerator in Des Moines. They kind of talked about their model. They talked about what they were doing. And a lot of people did not get them. It was, they just did not get what they were trying to do because they weren't really selling a risk product at the time. They were more understanding what the risk needs were, from a wide variety of things, as you said. And so you guys have really evolved that. Do you see the business model continuing to evolve?
I think Bought by Many is very comfortable with change, but at the same time, it's quite a focused place. So, as I say, I wouldn't really have entirely described it as a pivot that happened 3.5 years ago. It was an evolution. It was a natural
evolution. Yep.
So understanding customer needs, if that's where you are, and I think that's a really important thing that InsurTech brings to the industry.
I do too.
Stop. So, it's very interesting. There's often insurance and InsurTech are often set up as rival camps which I just totally don't buy. I mean, I think the whole point of insurance is a really strong, capable industry. But what the InsurTech movement is just about new evolution and fast innovation in a way that is very hard to do in a large organization. And that is absolutely no disrespect to the large industry at all. I just think that when you are very small and agile and focused and you don't have any legacy, you don't have any, politics within the business, you've just got one thing to do. It's very easy to really rush, really innovate in that flow. And by working together, you can be very, very strong, which is exactly how we've grown. We've got some very strong insurance partners behind. But I'm not surprised that people didn't get Bought by Many early on. They didn't. I think there was a lot of, and there still is a lot of confusion about what the point of these things are.
Yeah.
But if insurance was great about this, we wouldn't have the enormous image problem that we do in the eyes of customers, which we can debate whether or not is fair. But if you look at trust levels in the insurance industry, you know, they're really low. It was what I think 34th out of 41 industries on YouGov here in the
Yep.
UK,
Yep.
which seems unfair if you're inside the insurance industry and you know the number of claims that are paid and how it's, you know, people in the insurance industry really do try and do the best for their insurance customers. But I think we would be daft not to try and analyze why that is, and not to try and listen to why that is, and to evolve with that.
I think one of the things you hit on, you know, that we've talked about as an InsurTech community is really how they're InsurTech's outside in perspective, because they're not thinking in terms of this is how we've always done it, this is what insurance is. There's kind of an outside in perspective that is brought into the thinking, the products, the business model. The other thing I think you hit on was the customer. I think InsurTech, the one thing that I think it's taught the insurance industry is that at the end of the day, it's all about the customer and what the customer needs and where their expectations are evolving. And I think, you know, the industry's done a lot of customer research over the years, but sometimes they've done it they've asked the questions that they wanted to get the answers that they wanted to get. They didn't exactly ask the questions that they needed to ask to get information that they didn't know or didn't understand. You know, what is their customer experience with other industries like the Amazons, like the Googles, like the Apples, you know, other entities that they have a really great experience, and what can we learn from that? I think that's one of the really great values that InsurTech has really brought to the industry, and I'm looking for more of that over the next few years. Would you agree, Charlotte?
Absolutely. It's just systemically easier to move quickly and to pivot and to change if you are a very small organization. And let's be honest, it's about failure as well. And so there's plenty of InsurTech, there's plenty of startups that might have had a great idea and they don't last along the way. As a large company, if you test something new, there are problems that come from your strengths. So you are bigger. You do have lots of internal projects. You do have an enormous roadmap of very large items already. You do have your best people pointed often at your very specific immediate problems. You know, all of these things are part of the strength of the insurance industry and why insurance industries have been around for decades, hundreds of years, and why they will withstand the catastrophes, which is exactly what we need them to do. And why they are here for, why they can be here for customers years and years, year on. But if you are in a situation where you have 50 legacy systems, and if you do have, some internal politics and ways that things have to work, equally, if you are trying to, often in InsurTech, you're trying to bring up a rival product. So that's quite hard to do in a large organization. So if we take the example of, trying to create an entirely different pet product, if you already had an existing pet product, that's quite a hard thing to do as an existing company. I'm not saying it's not impossible, but if you're sort of competing with yourself, maybe you're undercutting your own products. Maybe you're testing things that, your experts are very doubtful about. All of these things are absolutely valid in a large organization, but make it harder, which is why an InsurTech that's focused on one thing, which is creating, throwing everything out and just creating the best pet products that customers want, and that's it, and that's what we're going to do, and we're going to change things completely. Of course it is easier to be focused on just that. There's much greater risks with that. I mean, if it doesn't work, that's everything you do.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is easier to do, which is why I think that there's absolutely, a very valid place for both. I think the InsurTech industry it's absolutely not perfect. There's, InsurTech needs to look at itself, make sure it's not in an ivory tower, make sure that it's actually considering the market. It's very easy to get tied up with a wonderful idea, something that's wonderful on paper, but actually the market will come and hit you with a sledgehammer. And insurance has really good reasons for having regulation and ways that it does things and ways that it makes sure that it's here for a long term. So, you do need to consider both. Technology itself will not save anyone.
No.
It's a tool. It's a tool. So, that tech of
technology for technology's sake just doesn't ever win. It really doesn't.
So you've got to have, the word is InsurTech. You've got to have both. You've got to be the insurance side and the tech side. If you've got too much of either of them, then it kind of doesn't work.
I think, one of the things that, we were talking earlier before we got started, how all of us at the beginning of 2020 didn't expect us all to be in lockdown in our homes, with regard to COVID-19. And it really has kind of, to a great extent, kind of shaken up a lot of companies, including insurance, because they've had to really look at how are their business operating models. Are they really digitally enabled? Are they able to support their customers in a full digital way? Yeah, they may be able to have staff work from home, but do they still have a lot of manual paper processes? How do they really engage with the customers? All of that. And at the same time, on the InsurTech space, we've seen a drop, obviously, in funding in InsurTech, at least for a period of time here, which I think would be a travesty, because I think it's really powered some of the innovation, that's really been going on. So as you look forward into 2020 and beyond, what do you think we're going to come out of this with some learning, Charlotte, with regard to our digital transformation as an industry, but also InsurTech and the funding in InsurTech and innovative ideas?
Oh, it's such a good question. It feels like a real time of seismic change. So I think this event has made people consider their lives, how they live their lives, how they go to work, how they interact with work. And then for the insurance industry, it's really made us consider how we can be better for customers. I mean, it was really interesting on lockdown. So Bought by Many went entirely remote with, I wouldn't say it was easy, like totally easy, but certainly from a systems point of view, it was seamless. And from our customers' point of view, it's seamless. I think we dropped one call out of 600 on the day that we went entirely, completely remote. But other than that, we're already in the cloud, everything's technology enabled, or everybody works, through Slack. We're already used to video calls, multiple locations. None of that was difficult. And our products as well were really designed to be far better than others. So for things like, we have embedded video conference vet calls for all our customers.
Oh, wow.
Unlimited free. That was always a fantastic service for our customers, incredibly well rated. It's got an approval rating over 99%. So already incredibly valuable, but at this time, it suddenly was just an essential. It was something that for our customers meant that they could access a vet anytime, 24/7. So we really did have some items that met customers' needs really, really well at this time. I would say it wasn't, they were always developments that were really useful. So it was always a really useful feature, but it makes you consider going forwards how that's even more important. Some of the things you've said around what that will mean for change. I mean, we're absolutely still, we're considering what we want to do with our staff and remote working, because actually we've never worked better. We're incredibly efficient.
I would agree.
Really happy. So our employee NPS scores have never been higher. And I think that's because we've all made a big effort to over communicate, to make sure that, so it's even more, I suppose it's even easier to access people anytime. We were saying this just before the call, how it's so easy to contact anyone at the moment, because you don't have to, there's not this expectation to travel to go and see someone. You just say, right, you've got 10 minutes this afternoon and that's it. So it's very easy to access people. And we have, for the first month after lockdown, we had our CEO did an all hands call every day at 4:30. So, the dissemination of information was really, really important, made everybody really feel part of it. And we still do it 3 times a week. It's very popular, really helps us with communication. So there's a huge amount of that we want to keep. So we want to keep our employees really happy. We want to make sure that there's loads of good things about, not having to commute every day, about having that more flexibility in work. about the great communication from the top of the organization. Whereas at the same time, we also want to make sure that we keep the culture and we keep everybody together. So there's a balance that we'll need to work out going forward. How we onboard people, how we train people up, how we support junior members of the team, things like this. So we're really doing a lot of thinking at the moment about the best way of getting that balance. I think it will look different going forwards to being back, and everybody will be very happy about that. From a funding point of view, that's really, really interesting. Obviously, Bought by Many closed our round, our Series C round, which was obviously a lot of the work for that was done pre the lockdown time, because a lot of this sort of the due diligence work. So I guess we didn't have that problem. Although, to be honest, I mean, I think a lot of these things, they would still be, as we were saying, you do them in a different way, but they're still very possible. So, so I guess we saw that in a normal world beforehand. But yes, for us, the closing of the round was as we planned. But certainly, I see around the industry that others are having difficulties, and that can really be about line of business as well. So, obviously, through some lines of business are very affected by the COVID situation. So, I mean, all lines are affected, but some industries have just shrunk so much. So travel or, similar. So I guess that's linked to it. I think, what do I think it's going to look like going forward? I think there will be a lot of focus on the real. As I said, I think we were going into that phase anyway, to be honest. So in the InsurTech sort of hype cycle, there was that early real doubt of the whole industry that you and I lived through back in 2010, 2011. And then it seemed a few years ago, I almost didn't know what was going on. It was so bizarre to walk into these enormous conferences with so many people. And it seemed like there was just this incredible number of ideas, which is great. But it was that peak of the hype, I think.
Yep.
And then I think I was talking about this last year. I noticed a real change in the nature of conversations, that it seemed much more embedded in the insurance side than I'd seen 2 years ago. So I think there was already this. I think it was already moving in that direction, and I think this has probably just escalated it.
Yep.
I'm still really, really. I mean, I'm an optimist anyway, but I'm still incredibly optimistic for the future of InsurTech. I mean, what does the word mean anyway?
I think it's part of insurance now. I think it's really the combination together. Yeah.
I mean, we made up that word a few years ago, didn't we? And there's been so many articles written about what it really means and defining it, and I always find them a bit odd, because I always think, well, I don't know, and I've been doing it for 10 years.
It's really an embracement of new ideas and innovation and an outside in. It's all the things that InsurTech kind of reminded us of. I think one of the things that out of every crisis, if you kind of look back just the last 20 years, Charlotte, after 9/11, after the financial crisis, even with, I would say, for the insurance industry specifically, the emergence of InsurTech was a little bit of a crisis for the insurance industry, because they felt threatened. They kind of didn't know what to think of this whole thing. I think, and now out of COVID, out of every one of those crises, good things happened. Change happened, and we learned something, and new innovation came along, and we got a new perspective on things. Whether it was new products, it was how do we have to work with customers, it was new risk needs emerged. I think the same thing is going to happen here, and we're just going to continue to pivot and hopefully take the learnings that we've had over the last 5 to 7 years from an InsurTech and apply them and kind of accelerate what we need to do as an industry is continue to evolve.
And partner. I think partner has always been at the real heart of some of the most successful, I think all of the most successful InsurTechs. The fact that you can bring together, in this best model, you can bring together rapid innovation from an InsurTech and the strength and depth from the insurance industry. Yeah. And when they work together well, it really does create some fantastic things. So, I mean, I think that partnership is, it's been part of every successful model I've done, and I think it will, will continue to do so. And I don't see any reason why that shouldn't happen. for the reasons I described earlier, I think it's very possible. I mean, there's been some amazing innovation when I think of it for some large insurance and reinsurance companies as well. But it's, it's different, and that's fine. It's fine that the nature of, play to your strengths. If you're in a very large organization, you've got amazing resources and data and
Yep.
technology and fantastic experts, and leverage that. And as a small company, you've just got that laser focus, rushing forwards, a different sort of person often as well, because you can often attract a very different sort of person, and who is just more risk-taking, more likely to try something completely different. Maybe it's from a completely different industry.
So what advice would you give to insurers as they start this new decade?
Customer first. Always customer first. That's always been at the start of everything. So basically, when I talk to a lot of people in the insurance industry, and I ask them about their model, they often try and justify from the bottom up. And it comes to that, it's that Emperor's New Clothes question. It's that why. Keep asking why is something like it is? And then what does your customer actually want? The person who's actually paying, what do they actually want, and what's actually useful for them, and how is their life and their society changed? So that's my first. And then secondly, embrace a partnership. It's a great one. If you can find a way of working together well so that it's win-win-win for everyone, including the customer, why not? It can be faster, easier, less costly, and you can try things.
So my final question here, Charlotte, to kind of wrap up our conversation is, if you could pick one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would it be?
Evolution.
Love it.
We're evolving with the way society changes, and we've all really seen that right now with the most rapid evolution any of us have had to do, I think, in a very long time. But the insurance industry is stepping up and is trying things. I mean, it's not all been completely successful. There's been far too many ugly yellow boxes over websites saying, sorry, phone line's closed, I think, with some. But embrace the different ways people are working, the different ways that your customers are living. And insurance at its best is a superhero industry. It's all about helping people when they're in trouble, and involve with those different ways that people live so you can keep helping them when they're in trouble.
That's great. I think it's really great advice as we enter into this next new decade. Charlotte, I really want to thank you for your time and your insights. I think what you guys have done at Bought by Many is just fantastic. I think it's one of those products that has been a product that people have really wanted. And I think coming out of COVID-19, what I hear, at least here in the US, Charlotte, is that you can't find a dog at any of the shelters any longer because people brought animals into their homes as comfort, as a companion. And I think it's just going to continue to grow. I think the love of pets has really accelerated. And I think you guys have a great opportunity ahead of you.
We'll definitely grab that.
Yep, absolutely.
So good to talk to you.
You too, Charlotte. Thanks so much.
Stay happy and safe.
You too. Bye-bye.